Hello, everyone, and welcome to PCR's January Tips and Virtual Transition Times meeting. My name is Melissa Wyman, and I am PCR's Respite Care and Community Engagement Director. I will be your moderator this evening, so please feel free to send any questions or comments in the chat box below. We are so excited to be collaborating with Montgomery County Public Schools, MCPS Transition Service Unit, to provide an enhanced transition times program for transitioning youth, their families, and caregivers. We are delighted to offer this presentation with American Sign Language simultaneous interpretation. We will also be offering this presentation with Spanish simultaneous interpretation. To access the other interpretation services, at the bottom of your screen, select Interpretation, select Spanish for the Spanish interpretation, mute original audio if you only want to hear one language. The English and Spanish language versions will be archived on the PCR website Transition Times page. Just some Zoom tip reminders. We are using the webinar platform. We will wait for questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to submit any of your questions in the chat box below. Click Show Captions to see the captions for the webinar. You must select the speaking language you would like to show. Also, for funding needs, it is very important to receive feedback from our attendees. Please answer the one question poll by the end of the webinar. Thank you for your help and feedback. Tonight, we are so excited to have Officer Laurie Reyes from Montgomery County Police Department. Laurie?
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. And would you like me? I'll just go in my presentation. Just go right in.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, great. So the presentation's probably going to be about 20, 25 minutes, and then I'm going to leave time for questions. But I think the most important thing to know is you can reach out to me anytime. If you leave this presentation tonight and you think, I should have reached out, I should have asked this question, if you send me an email or I usually say call me, but texting is sometimes better as I can be on the road or busy, but I always get back to everyone. So if tonight any question isn't answered, or if you need me in the future, I strongly encourage families to save my contact in your phone as police officer Laurie Reyes, and that way if you ever needed me, you don't have to search. You'll know that it's right in your phone. Again, I am Officer Laurie Reyes. I've been a police officer for 28 years. I always also share that I'm a mom of two boys. I raised two boys while we're working as a police officer. And I am very fortunate in that 20 years ago, I was able to start what is now the model program for the nation, which is the Montgomery County Police Autism, IDD, Intellectual Developmental Disabilities, Alzheimer's, and Dementia Unit. So tonight I'm going to go over what our unit does, how your police department is educated, what kind of outreach do we provide? It's from wandering and elopement all the way up to those that may be in crisis and everything in between. So next slide. Our unit, again, like I mentioned, we started in 2004, 2005. At the time, I was pregnant with my now 22-year-old child. So I kind of gauge it by my son's age. And 20 some years ago, when I was starting the unit, folks, I would show up at autism conferences or other disabilities conferences, and folks would say, like, what are you doing here? Why is a police officer here? And think about, back that many years ago, we were not seeing the calls that we are seeing now involving those many times who have autism. But I don't want to leave anyone out by saying we provide to the entire spectrum of all disabilities. However, most of the calls we are seeing are usually involve individuals on the autism spectrum. Our unit, we provide training to all officers, and we've done so even before it was mandated by the state. So we've been providing that since about 2010. And folks would say, well, where did you get the training curriculum from? And I always say what I started to do was call caregivers after they had involvement with law enforcement. And I would call and I would say, hi there, I'm Officer Lori Reyes, and I know that you had an incident where police had to be called. Do you think there's something our officers could have done different or better? Um, Obviously, folks were kind of surprised receiving a call like that. And I would say, listen, I'm trying to develop curriculum to teach our officers. What would you want our officers to know based on your experience in that incident? So it grew from there. And like I said, I would show up at conferences and I would go most of the time in full uniform just to create a dialogue, just say, why is the officer here? So we developed a curriculum that we began to teach our officers, that we still teach our officers. It's very fluid, very much applicable to what we're seeing, what calls we're responding to, what family members are saying, what individuals are saying, and what the community is saying. And we provide that to officers that are current officers, our rookies. We just had a rookie class, a recruit class start yesterday. Those poor babies, they just started yesterday. So they'll get a full, my full curriculum of how to have positive, safe, effective interactions involving calls who have autism, with individuals who have autism or IDD. Basically, how to go that extra step to make sure that that interaction is not only safe, but is also productive, meaning resources are provided if needed. Another pillar of our unit is the follow-up component. We had about 984 follow-ups last year. And I work with another officer who retired, Officer Amy Stoughton. And what we do is like for instance, tonight, we've already received 3 pages for calls involving individuals in the autism spectrum. So we kind of make a list. And if I can't respond to the call, then either officers will call me on scene or call Amy. But if they're not calling the next day, in a couple of days following, we really try to follow up with all of those calls to say, what do you need? What happened? Is there any other resources? Is it wandering safety resources or is it resources for crisis? So part of our follow-up can be dropping off information on wandering, home visits. It's really limitless. We just were able to secure a young man enrollment at Rockville High School yesterday. He's homeless and he's a man who has autism and an intellectual disability. So we worked with Adult Protective Services to secure him into a local high school. Education, kind of like we're doing tonight. We provide about 150 or more presentations a year. And that's important, just like why tonight is important, creating those partnerships and contacts. And then the last piece is the response piece. I kind of laugh. I am now 52 years old, responding to calls in full uniform. And for those that are over 50, wearing an extra 20 pounds of gear. But it's important to me. I love showing up at calls. And I love when officers see me show up at calls that they're already doing the right thing. Sometimes most of the time I'm not even needed. They're doing the right thing, but I like to respond so families can see me in person, provide that information right on scene. I think that really sends a strong response, a strong message that we're here for families. Next call. Sorry. Next page. It's a long day. What are we doing? I have this slide because I think it's important. You're going to see what we're doing throughout this entire presentation. The uniqueness of our unit comes within those pillars that I mentioned. We're fortunate enough to be able to do follow-ups, be able to not just have officers provide a pamphlet. We try to make that community and have that phone call with a mom or dad who sometimes just want somebody to listen to them. And sometimes we are the first people that are reaching out to a family and just to say, call us if you need us. Next slide. Again, going back to what we're doing, all incoming recruits, our CIT, which is now changed to CRT, our critical response officers, that all of our officers are receive full training on mental health and understanding that obviously the autism and IDD, it doesn't fall under that mental health necessarily, but what we're seeing is more instances where we have to, in collaboration with our officers for crisis, regardless of the diagnosis, we just need to provide that crisis response. And we are always continuously addressing and updating our curriculum, our outreach to concerns that we are seeing in the community. Be it reaching out to, for instance, the Ethiopian disabilities coordinators and saying, I feel like we need to provide more outreach in that particular community. I mean, it's really limitless. We kind of are able to see what needs addressing, and we also track what kind of calls we're handling and where, so that when we're articulating needing more response or needing more efforts in a certain area, we have the data to back it up, and it's very powerful. The other thing we're seeing, I just taught a batch of officers today in Prince George's County, and I said to them, like I say to our officers, we're seeing an increase in specific to autism for this one, an increase in age and prevalence. So how does that affect law enforcement? Like I said, 20 years ago, when I was going to a conference and people would say, what are you doing here? Or in the schools or where have you, all those years ago, many of our calls were for little peanuts. I call them little guys, right? We still have those calls, but now let's say the example I give is we had calls, maybe 20 years ago and still have for the 5-year-old in the middle of Mid-County Highway who's wandered. And I say, everybody's stopping to help the 5-year-old, right? Everybody. My mom and her Ford Focus is stopping to help the 5-year-old in the middle of Mid-County Highway that's eloped. But what's happening now is you may have a 25-year-old that's in the middle of Mid-County Highway, and maybe their behavior is alarming. Nobody's stopping. They're calling 911. And we needed to make sure that officers knew that as they're responding to that call, that could be an individual who is on the autism spectrum, because now they're educated on the prevalence of autism. So all of those things were important that officers, because almost all of our calls, when we have interactions, we don't know who we're interacting with. It's usually due to a wandering incident, and we don't have much information on the person we're coming into contact with. Other concerns that we see is obviously, I'm preaching to the choir with this group, changes in healthcare coverage, changes in availability of service providers. Well, people say, well, why do the police care about that? Well, because if we have an individual who's in crisis that maybe needs to be placed for the safety or for many reasons, we don't have that as an option. So what do parents have? Calling 911, because there's no place else to go. And again, that's changes that drastically affect how officers are responding. Co-occurring conditions. What we're seeing in the last 15 years is, in my opinion, as an officer, unprecedented. Younger individuals that have dual diagnosis, right? They have autism and other mental health concerns. And how does that affect us? Because we're seeing more calls of a serious nature for those who may be more profoundly impacted with certain behaviors that calls a parent or caregiver to call 911. Next slide. Our community partnerships. The big joke is I partner with anyone. So these are just some of the ones we reach out to a lot. But if you reach out as an organization and you want a presentation or you have someone who's in need, we're constantly trying to make sure that we satisfy providing resources to any partners. These are just a few. We work with adult protective services all the time, and not in a punitive way, in a way that we're trying to get people services. Same for child protective services. Let's say we find a child in the middle of 108 in Alney. Well, officers are probably going to, and no one's called 911 to report. And we've had them in our care for a couple of hours because families, for whatever reason, didn't call 911. Well, that's going to be a call to Child Protective Services. Now, I know that in most cases, that's going to be a mom or a dad who maybe just didn't call 911, right? And maybe it's not, again, we try not to make it punitive. We make it from an educational piece, a resources providing piece. And I think that's important to understand that as a parent, you may feel like, wow, I really dropped the ball because now Child Protective Services is involved. And we also work with Department of Justice, different federal, local, all kinds of different organizations to try and get, measures in place to keep our kiddos safe and make sure parents get the resources that they need. Next slide. Some of our events and outreach, some things I'm most proud of. All right, so the ones I'm most proud of. Years ago, I went to MVA, MDOT, and said, this was 15 years ago or more. And I said, gosh, it'd be great if we had something on our computer that let us know that there was an individual who was driving that had a disability, voluntary, right? We could pull it up when an officer ran the tag, it would show up. Well, that we got the kibosh on. Couldn't do that. But what they came up with was the blue card. So if you're a driver with a disability, you could provide information in the card that was like a self-disclosure card for those that are driving that may have a disability. Then we dovetailed that, partnering with Pathfinders for Autism, and now we provide Pathfinders does it throughout the state, but we provide a curriculum, which is a webinar that you can find on the Pathfinder site. It's a webinar and a in-person mock traffic stop class. That is for drivers as well as passengers, knowing what to do in the event that an individual is pulled over. And we worked with our traffic cops. It's always a fun day. Love that day. Some other things we do. I'm in schools a lot. I give presentations to our kids from kindergarten all the way up to college for learning. So meaning, it's really, I present to the audience. Is it about learning, learning more about what officers do or what to do if you were stopped by a police officer? We go over, well, you didn't do anything wrong, but here's what you do if a police officer approaches you. It really is limitless in what if there's a need that needs to be addressed to a particular classroom, let's say it's social media safety, well, then we'll address that. And the other flip side of that is that we've done assemblies, entire school assemblies. God bless our teachers. We did entire school assemblies to middle schools on why we have an autism IDD unit. And I call the assembly looking out for the underdog. And I understand that can be, have a negative connotation, but for me, it doesn't, because that's what I've always told my kids is always look out for the underdog because you could be the underdog the next day. So the main point of that assembly is to say why the police department has such a unit for individuals who have autism and IDD. And it's a wonderful experience. It's a really wonderful experience to see kids come up to us after and say, thank you so much. My sister has autism. My brother has Down syndrome. Thank you for this. We give about 200 or so community presentations, like I said, and then, of course, tons and tons of follow-up. Next slide. And I see all these questions coming up. I promise I'll get them at the end. I'm seeing them all.
Yes, and I'll be happy to help you and say them.
Got it. Nope, got it. Thank you so much for that.
Of course.
The other initiatives we have within schools, I say it all the time. I am so lucky. We have such great partners within our autism classes, our LFI classes, our bridge programs. We work with those teachers all the time. Um, it's truly limitless. If a young man or a young lady, let's say, has had some bumps in the road and maybe police have gotten involved, we work to make sure to provide the tools to put, it's not saying put them on a different path, that's not right, but maybe make better choices moving forward. So our partnership with MCPS on so many different levels, from our kiddos that may wander, making sure parents know to tell the school if they had a wandering elopement at home, you could have a wandering elopement situation at school. And I have never left the school. I always say I was in school in uniform all the time. I present to our kiddos in uniform. I tell them I'm a mom. I show them pictures of my dogs. I feel that it's so important for me to be in full uniform, because when police are called, that's what our kiddos are going to see. So they have to see the good side of our officers, that we are there for them. And I stress, of how many 40 to 60 calls that we handle, at least one a day. Our officers are doing a fantastic job in very, very stressful calls sometimes, getting those families the help that they need. So that's what we do with an MCPS. Next slide. Why do I keep saying call? Okay, so wandering and elopement. We average 5 to 8 calls a week for individuals, again, usually those who have autism that have wandered. In recent months, we had 1 week where we had 18 calls for individuals that wandered, and only one of those calls was someone that called 911. It's like anything else. There's ebbs and flows, but not seasonal. There's no rhyme or reason to when we get bombarded with calls. In the last 2 days, we've had 3 elopements from schools and 2 from homes. So it's not weather related. It's not like, oh, it's warm out and then we get more. There's no rhyme or reason. But I share that as I share that with caregivers when it happens to them, that it's so common for it to happen, and to be aware of the potential dangers of wandering. A couple of safety recommendations, and I know I've included the brochure. Is probably going to be, we'll add the link at the end. I have the brochure in Spanish, Amharic, and English, our wandering safety brochure. So most important, if your loved one is missing, do not wait to call 911. Don't wait. Do not wait. Don't wait and search on your own. Call 911. Make sure that everybody in your household knows to call 911 right away. I'll tell you a little funny story. It's funny because everything turned out fine. But recently, we had a young man who's in middle school with autism, this young man who has autism, and he wandered from his house and went about 2.5 miles to 7-Eleven and began eating food at 7-Eleven. God love him. I love a hot dog from 7-Eleven too. Right. So now officers get the call for the child at 7-Eleven alone, eating food. Officers respond to the 7-Eleven. About 30 to 40 minutes later, so meaning this kid had gone 2 miles already, about 30 or 40 minutes later, they get a call that said a child was missing, right? It's the grandfather. Poor grandpa. The grandfather calls and said his son just ran out the front door and he couldn't keep up with him. Okay, so now we know that's not exactly how it happened. So mom calls, and I get it, I'm a mom too, and she says, well, obviously my son must have been kidnapped, because my dad ran after him as soon as he ran away. So I'm saying, well, you have to know that we average 3 to 8 of these a week, and caregivers don't call, and it's okay. And she said, no, I know that my dad would have been hot on his tail. So I said, why don't we put dad on speaker? And I said, Dad, when you called 911 right after you saw him, what happened? He said, well, they told me they had him at 7-Eleven. And mom and I, you know how when moms connect and you have this like aha moment? Both of us understood exactly what happened. We're not blaming grandpa. We're just saying conversations need to be had with grandpas, grandmas, aunties, siblings, children to say, if so and so goes missing, call 911 right away. Don't wait. You're not in trouble. The police aren't mad. I'm not going to be mad. It's really important to just stress that because we find that with all kinds of caregivers not calling 911. And I'm not saying it's lying. It's just a little, my dad would probably do the same thing. It's a little embellishment of the truth of how long someone's been gone. So we just really emphasize call 911 right away. Think about installing door alarms. I love a ring camera, that kind of device, because it alerts when a door is opened. Informing the neighbors. We have a neighbor letter on our brochure. And the neighbor letter, again, it's your comfort level. If you feel comfortable sharing with your neighbors that you have a child that may wander, do it. But it's not for everybody, understand that. But I'll explain this. Many of our kiddos go into other people's homes. Now, it's again one thing when it's a 5-year-old that goes to the neighbor's house. But as a 25-year-old that goes into a neighbor's house, that could go out as a home invasion robbery in progress because someone's like, who is this person? Letting the neighbors know if you have a loved one that wanders is so important. You can share as little or as much information as you choose, but letting them know is can be truly the difference between a poor outcome and a good outcome. We've had so many of our young men and women that wander into other people's homes, especially at night. So just consider it. It's a personal choice, as a caregiver. Also important, identification bracelets. I understand the challenges of keeping a bracelet on. That can be very challenging for many of our folks. But the ID bracelet, I recommend in twofold. So, and I do like the road ID style. I like that style because it can be cut to fit and it doesn't have to say, you can say a diagnosis, but for some of our guys maybe navigating some independence, you don't have to say a diagnosis, but a diagnosis and a couple cell phone numbers of people that'll answer the phone is so important. And then work with your loved one that if they're approached by a police officer or a first responder to show them the bracelet. If they lose all their words, they can just show the bracelet. Of course, structural barriers, fences, all of those things are really good. Tracking technologies, I can touch on that a little bit. The technologies have gotten better. In the beginning of our unit 20 years ago, I provided a tracking device. We no longer provide one. We're happy to kind of tell you the ins and outs of devices, but we can't. I don't endorse any. I don't even really. Some are better. It's just really knowing what you're getting with the device that you get. Right? An Apple AirTag isn't GPS. So it uses crowdsourcing technology, but knowing what the limitations are of the device that you choose is really important. And how is it going to stay on? And most important, even if they have tracking on, don't look on your own because the reliability isn't always 100%. And you could track to an area that they've been gone from for 20 minutes. So utilize it with all other safety measures in place. Introducing your loved one to a police officer, never use us as the bad guy. Never say, oh, if you don't buckle your seatbelt, the police are going to arrest you. Never ever use us as the bad guys because we need to be the good guys. So just making sure that you say the officers, you need to buckle up because the police want to keep you safe, not because they're going to get in trouble. And that's true with conversations and social stories. And then if you have an incident of wandering or elopement at home, make sure you let the school know. Make sure you include it in their IEP or whatever safety plan you have. Make sure you let the school know that your child tried to elope from home. And don't worry about alarming the school. Just let them know that it happened so that they don't have an incident at school and everyone's kind of caught off guard. Be really transparent. Next slide. More so if you're calling, call 911 right away, stay calm, take a deep breath. I always say it this way: be the mama bear or the papa bear or the grandma bear. Be really calm and be an advocate, right? Stay calm, even if it's holy smokes, they just ran from you in the middle of a parking lot at Target in Germantown. You still got to stay calm, take a deep breath, and be an advocate for that person you're caring for. You don't have a choice. Be very calm and say what your loved one will need. Will they run to traffic? Will they go to a body of water? Will they listen to officers should they be called? Use common language. Don't say, my child is moderately my child is moderately impacted. This is usually for caregivers. Say what your child will do and won't do in common language. Will they bolt and run across the street? Will they go into a body of water? Say things that matter at that time to the dispatch and to responding officers. Recently, it's been mandated through our department that we respond to these calls for missing at risk priority. That means lights and sirens. Don't be alarmed. Who cares? You know what? Even as a parent, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's embarrassing. They're coming. You want the cavalry coming, and you want them coming to your destination. They'll cut the lights and sirens when they get there, but you want them coming as fast as they can so we can saturate the area. We also utilize, we're so fortunate here, we have our MSOT, which is our Managed Search Operations team. And if a search continues over a certain amount of time, they'll get involved and be able to make sure that we get even more resources in line. Make sure that you stay put. So if your child runs from the house and you've lost them, right? You don't know where they are in the neighborhood. Go back to your house so that officers you have a point of reference, right? I know it's really hard, but if you can, have someone stay at the house while you keep looking, but someone should stay at the house. Next slide. Another thing to that, we don't have a database. And the reason we don't have a database is there's over 5,000 students on the autism spectrum just in Montgomery County, not to mention adults and those that aren't in school. So the common question we get is, well, why don't we keep a database? And here's the reasoning. To keep a database active and up to date, meaning you entered the information into a database that your loved one likes to go to McDonald's at Crabs Branch, but you never changed it, that they don't even go there anymore. They always wander and go to the house 6 houses down. So my concern for a database is, one, it would be so much manpower to keep it up to date and accurate, when the truth is the most important information comes from you calling 911 and telling us about your child or your loved one. Then the flip side of that is folks will say, well, I want you to know about my child should you encounter them. We don't have challenges once we have the individual in our care. We never have challenges there. So the fact that your child maybe doesn't like dogs or may be alarmed by XYZ, at that moment, it doesn't matter. They're safe. They're in our care. All we need to do is get in touch with you and have you call 911. So for us, a database, it sounds great, but in the end, it's really not how things go when calls go out. So having a picture ready to provide clothing description, point last seen, And this is a tough one, be completely open. And if you have a sibling, right, that was playing their video game and maybe they didn't call for 2 hours, and you as a parent need to say, Johnny, did you really last see him 10 minutes ago? Or were you playing your video game for 2 hours and you haven't seen him for 2 hours? So we do the same thing in law enforcement. Officers will say to a caregiver when they say they've been gone 10 minutes, be completely honest. How long have they actually, when's the last time you saw them? All those things matter because it broadens or shrinks the scope of our search and where we're searching, notifying public transportation. All of those things broaden when an individual's been gone for 2 hours. We already covered the plain language. Next slide. So that kind of covered wandering and elopement, and I know I'm going to go through this and then answer questions. More of our, again, what we offer is home visits. That's part of our follow-up. We provide a home visit, let's say and knowing manpower, it's just being another officer. But I try to, and sometimes I do the home visits over Zoom, just like I'm doing right now from my driveway. It's not perfect, but sometimes a Zoom home visit, virtual home visit, can be very impactful. So a home visit, sometimes I go to the house, maybe talk to a young person who's wandered. I had a young man in Olney that wandered from his house in Olney all the way to Columbia, just because he was upset about a day he had at school and he didn't tell anyone. And it was an all-out search. So the home visit there is not punitive. I'm not mad at him. I'm just saying, listen, explaining how the fact that he left and didn't tell anybody led us to have like 10 or 15 officers looking for him. So just kind of going over those things. It's never punitive. Follow-up discussions, referrals to additional resources, safety kit drop-off. Our safety kit contains our safety t-shirt. The safety t-shirt is designed only, it says, I'm a person who has autism, IDD, please call 911 if I'm alone, and it's bright yellow. It is only designed for those individuals who are in immediate danger and cannot speak for themselves. That t-shirt I drop off or an officer drops off personally. We never drop off that shirt to someone that says, hey, could you drop off a t-shirt? Nope, you got to go through the whole spiel with Lori Reyes and make sure that it's applicable to your situation. We're very specific in who receives that t-shirt. Some of the other things in the safety kit are window clings for the home, for the car, that says a person with autism may reside here or may be in this vehicle. Next slide. Never underestimate this young man who I began to, my folks that I have contact with become like family, right? It's just inherent in 20 years of doing this. So I share this. This is Mr. M with Officer Laura Blankman, who's lucky and retires. But Mr. M had over 100 elopements, over 100, 131 to be exact. And Mr. M would do things like this, take a bed pillow and cover it with a comforter. So when his caregiver went to look at him, it appeared as if he was sleeping, when in reality, he had gone from Germantown to the Wheaton Glenmont Metro. So we teach this, we share this slide with our officers because as they're even on a search themselves, never underestimate who you're searching for, right? Never think, oh, they wouldn't go over this gate or they wouldn't be in that pool area. So just so important for officers, we teach them never to underestimate. Next slide. Tracking, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Again, I don't have a device that I recommend. Just do your homework. It can still be challenging if you're utilizing GPS versus a Bluetooth tracker. Just really know that for me, tracking can be great, but never use it instead of calling 911. Cell phones have gotten, obviously, they're amazing. I track my own kids with cell phones, but just know that the tracking has to be in combination with all other possible safety measures. And that's for those that you're tracking, those who have their certain level of independence, to those that would be in immediate danger. Just really do your homework. Next slide. Again, I just put in here of our follow-ups. We did about 924 follow-ups last year, and it's usually not one and done. Once you're in, once you're in that rotation, as we're all well aware, it's not like you have one incident and that's it. We oftentimes have many contacts with those that we provide that outreach to. Next slide. Almost done. Time for questions. So this is a link. If you took a picture of your screen, this is a link, a QR code link to our brochure. And like I said, we do have the brochure now in Amharic and Spanish. And then we do have a full website that kind of goes over our unit, but this is a link to our various brochures. Keep that up. If you want to take a picture, we'll have it back up. So a couple of important things we really stress when we're in schools is self-disclosure, and that is obviously not everyone is able to do that, and we understand that. That's why we utilize, ID bracelets or whatever that self-disclosure looks like. It's so important, especially for our kiddos that are older and may have contact with law enforcement. Is saying whoops, that poll came up. Making sure that folks feel comfortable and we explain why self-disclosure could be so important. Next slide. I want to leave time for questions. Next slide. Can you hear me still? A poll came up. I want to make sure. Did I lose you guys?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, oh, good. So safety kit, this is a picture of our safety t-shirt and our window clings for the home. And to receive that, you would just send me an email. And again, I personally speak to everyone that receives a safety kit. We never just drop them off, especially if you're receiving a t-shirt. We really go over kind of almost everything we went through tonight, but we just really go over making sure that you feel comfortable calling 911, what to say, and just a kind of an introduction. But my email is going to be at the end, but my email is also on the back of the safety brochures, that if you were interested in any of the contents of the safety kit, you could just reach out to me. Next slide. Oh, another picture of our brochure. And I'm going to take questions. I think let's go to the next one. So this is it. So we can open up to questions now if you wanted.
Okay, perfect. So the first question is, I know that Hartford County has provided a live experience to help individuals with autism learn how to respond to a traffic stop. Does Montgomery County provide this experience? And if not, can it consider doing so?
Yeah, we were actually the first ones. We developed the curriculum. So if you go to the Pathfinders for Autism website and you look at the webinar, it's our webinar along with Pathfinders. We just had one here in 2 months ago, I think. So we just had ours, and we don't have one scheduled anytime soon, but I would say until probably spring. But I would say take a look at if you go to the Pathfinders for Autism site and you searched in their block the webinar, that is myself, Tara Bond, and the individuals from Pathfinders. We're on that webinar that describes, in a video, how to have a safe traffic stop.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we've had a bunch of questions about the card. So is the blue card for mental health disabilities as well, or just autism?
So the blue card is for anyone who wanted to self-disclose a disability during a traffic stop. So that blue card is for either drivers. It's mostly for drivers, but that blue card doesn't isn't applicable to, or isn't specific to any one diagnosis. It's really for anyone who wants an officer who's getting information on the side of the road to know that the individual that they're pulling over may have a disability. And what you're saying to the officer is, it's okay to ask me, it's okay to ask me if you have questions about, do I have a disability? But I think it should be combined with self-disclosure. So you're handing the the blue envelope, and you're maybe self-disclosing if it's applicable. I mean, maybe you don't have to do that. That's a personal choice that we're not saying you have to. We're just saying if you want to, here's an easy way to provide that information. So, but no, it's not just for autism. It's for all individuals who have a disability.
Okay, great. And then the kind of continuous on it, how is the blue card different from the butterfly logo on the cards?
So the butterfly logo is only on the driver's license. So the butterfly logo on the driver's license, that insignia, the insignia just lets officers know that the person that they're encountering has a disability. The only deficit to that is it's not gonna allow them to know what your disability is or how they can accommodate you. So there's still that piece. It just gives officers a little up, a little information that maybe the person I'm encountering does have a disability, but you're still going to have to provide, if you feel comfortable, you're still going to have to provide officers with your disclosing your disability and how they may accommodate, but it just gives them a little heads up, really. And the blue card is just that. It's a blue envelope that you can put your driver's license in and then fill out the top of an insurance and keep it in your visor. And both of those you can get through the Motor Vehicle Administration.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, because that was a few questions was how do we get them? So thank you. Is there a special procedure to get kids with autism to have a driver's license?
No. So what I would encourage is, if you have you've got someone who wants to get their driver's license, have them get their learner's permit. And it's no different than, doing the rest of us who have gray hairs trying to teach their children how to drive. So no, there's no procedure. There are some, I think there's some, maybe through Seek, some or Doors, some classes. I don't have the information off the top of my head, but I guess it's no different than any other individual, right? Who's kind of figuring out if driving is right for them. So we've had families that will get their learner's permit and then kind of go from there. That gives you a little opportunity. Maybe you're practicing in a parking lot. Um, Maybe you're kind of just getting familiarized with driving. And again, I would recommend you could look at the webinar that's on the Pathfinders for Autism website. And oh, right, Montgomery College offers a driving class too. So just kind of look around and see what adaptive driving classes there are. And then just, like I said, join the club of us that have taught our children how to drive.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah, so they said, please repeat what kind of bracelet is best. The sound cut out. Also, is there a registry of kids with autism?
No, no registry. So I'll answer that first. I know I kind of touched on it. We do not have a registry, and kind of for the two reasons I said. The first being that in most cases, when we come across someone, we don't know who they are. So a registry is of no value because we don't even know we don't know who they are at all. And the other reason is there's just so many individuals that a registry would be almost impossible to keep up to date and accurate. The other is in almost all instances, if we come across someone and they're in our care, we don't have any challenges normally with that interaction, right? We don't have that where we're trying to figure out what someone's likes and dislikes are. We're just trying to keep them safe until we reunite them. And then in the other final thought I had, I know I shared before, is nothing is more important, nothing is more valuable than information coming straight from a caregiver that's up to date and accurate. Meaning, a registry is great, but it might hold information that's no longer applicable or accurate. We need folks to know that calling 911 right away and not having information just sitting in a database that officers probably won't even have a chance to look at if the call is an in progress call. Next question. Oh, the bracelet. The road, I like the road ID. Again, I don't endorse anything. It's just over the years, I like the road ID style. It's called roadid.com. And the reason why I like the road ID is the clasp is pretty secure and the bracelet can be cut to fit so it doesn't ride up and down your arm. And then as far as engraving on it, you would not necessarily need to put a diagnosis. You could just put, Johnny Reyes with some cell phone numbers, and officers would know, okay, this might be a person who has a disability. And the reason I say that is not all of our kiddos and adults want a diagnosis on a bracelet, right? It has to be whatever that person's comfort level is. So you can or can't put a diagnosis. It's up to you.
Okay, great. So are officers aware of how to recognize misunderstood feelings? For example, if a child says, I feel unsafe, however, no one did anything, said anything that threatened them, but the tone of voice used to communicate with them offended them, would the officer recognize the language confusion once they heard the conversation, or would they be quick to say, okay, you're unsafe during a home visit?
No, I mean, officers, like I said, we have about 40 to 60 calls a month running the gamut, and officers would, obviously it's the totality of the circumstances. Officers wouldn't just take that and say, that the individual says they're unsafe. I would say the answer to that is officers do a really good job recognizing and adapting to the understanding of what an individual with a disability may be trying to convey, considering the entirety, totality of the circumstances.
Okay, thanks. What are your suggestions for crisis management, like aggression or physical harm?
That's a tough one. So I would say this: if we have great partnerships with our crisis center. Working, meaning if it's in progress and you feel not safe, you have a child that's maybe or a loved one that's combative, that's a threat to themselves or others. If you needed to call 911, say exactly what is happening. Say the diagnosis, say the behavior, say prior behavior, say what might calm the individual down. In many of our cases, just the mere presence of officers responding calms that child down or the adult down. Just the mere presence of us coming. So that's a very common phenomenon for us. That the parent calls, we arrive, the child is calm. We would do things like recommend that you follow up with the crisis center, with your doctor, with your school, all of those things. And we know it's challenging. And there are times when your loved one could be really aggressive and really combative, even destructive. And if officers get there and they're calm, there might not be enough for them to be transported because they're not a threat to themselves or others at that time. It's very challenging for our officers, meaning we can't just scoop someone up and take them to the hospital. You could take them to the crisis center, but we can't just scoop up an individual because they were aggressive 30 minutes ago and broke a door down. Even though we get there, if they're calm, there's not. It's our hands are really tied. So it's certainly challenging, and we understand it, and officers are understanding to that. But there's times when officers can calm the situation down and tell you call back if they're aggressive again, but at that moment we may not be able to take them on what's called an emergency petition. So I know that's
Okay.
not a great answer, but that's what I have, and kind of answering it in a concise way just for purposes of this presentation.
Does the police department have self-defense classes?
No, not that I'm aware of. You could, yeah, I don't think so. No, I don't think we do. No, I've never seen any advertised.
Okay, and that is the end of the questions.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right. Yes. Well, everyone, thank you so much, Laurie. Was so helpful. You're so knowledgeable, and as you said, if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to you. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then, so looking ahead, our virtual transition times meetings will be held once a month from now until June. All meetings will continue to be offered with simultaneous ASL and Spanish and archived on the PCR website. Thank you so much and hope to see you next month.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye.